Vin Diesel did not replace Paul Walker, and Meadow Walker never asked him to. What grew between them was something quieter, stronger, and far more meaningful. It was a bond formed through grief, loyalty, and a promise that did not need to be written down. After Paul Walker died, Vin became one of the people who made sure Meadow would never face the world alone. Years later, when she walked toward the altar, it was Vin who walked beside her. That single moment revealed more than any rumor ever could. Meadow Walker was born on November 4th to a 1998 in Los Angeles, California. She was the only child of actor Paul Walker and Rebecca Soteros. Although her father was becoming one of Hollywood's most recognizable stars, Meadow spent much of her early childhood in Hawaii with her mother. Rebecca wanted to protect her from publicity and from the pressure that came with Paul's growing fame. Meadow's first world was shaped by the ocean, the island atmosphere, and a quieter life, far from Hollywood. That changed in 2011. At the age of 13, Meadow moved to California to live with Paul. The decision brought her closer to her father, but it also brought her directly into the world of Fast and Furious. Paul was already famous as Brian O'Connor, and the people around him had become more than co-workers. Vin Diesel, Jordana Brewster, Michelle Rodriguez, Chris Bridges, and other members of the cast were part of a close circle that often described itself as family. Meadow later remembered growing up on set and watching her father, Vin, Jordana, Michelle, Chris, and others through the monitors. Fast and Furious was never simply a film series in her life. It was part of her childhood, and many cast members became like extended relatives. For Paul, however, Meadow was more important than any role. He often spoke about the way fatherhood changed him. Her calm spirit and love of simple things helped ground him while his career became larger. Hollywood offered speed, success, and attention, but Paul increasingly valued private moments with his daughter. Meadow had only recently begun to spend more time with him when everything changed. In November 2013, Paul Walker died in a tragic car accident. He was 40 years old. Meadow was only 15. She had moved to California just 2 years earlier, and the relationship she had long wanted with her father had finally begun to deepen. His death left her facing a loss that no public tribute could repair. Her mother and other relatives came to California to support her, while members of the Fast and Furious cast also reached out. Vin Diesel shared a message of strength, love, and faith for the Walker family. Jordana Brewster remained close and continued to express her care. Michelle Rodriguez also offered support. Yet Vin's connection to Meadow carried a special weight because Paul had trusted him deeply. Paul and Vin had built a friendship that extended far beyond the screen, and Paul had chosen Vin as Meadow's godfather. That decision became even more important after Paul's death. Vin did not step into Meadow, and he did not become her adoptive father. He became a steady presence because of loyalty. He once said that he felt very protective of her and that the feeling went beyond the movies. Over time, his actions showed exactly what he meant. Vin referred to himself as Uncle Vin. He included Meadow in family gatherings, celebrated her milestones, and reminded her that she remained part of a larger family. His children welcomed her closely. Meadow also became deeply connected to them, and that connection was visible during one of the most emotional moments of her adult life. In October 2021, Meadow married actor Louis Thornton Allen. As she walked toward the altar, Vin Diesel walked beside her in the place her father could not. The image immediately touched fans around the world. It was not a performance, and it was not an attempt to replace Paul. It was the visible result of years of trust. Meadow also chose Vin's eldest daughter as her maid of honor, showing how completely the two families had grown together. To understand why Vin took that role so seriously, It is necessary to understand the life Paul Walker lived and the friendship the two men shared. Paul William Walker IV was born on September 12th in Glendale, California. His father, Paul William Walker III, was a successful amateur boxer who won 2 Golden Gloves championships. His grandfather, William Walker, was also connected to boxing and had a passion for car racing. Paul entered entertainment unusually early. At 2 years old, he appeared in a Pampers advertisement. During the early 1980s, he worked in commercials and television. In 1984, he appeared in the CBS School Break special, followed by roles in Highway to Heaven, Charles in Charge, and Who's the Boss. In 1993, Paul joined The Young and the Restless as Brandon Collins. His work with Heather brought recognition and Youth in Film Award nominations. He later moved into films including Monster in the Closet and Tammy and the T-Rex before larger Hollywood productions arrived. The turning point came in 2001. Paul played Brian O'Connor in The Fast and the Furious, an undercover police officer drawn into the world of street racing. Vin Diesel played Dominic Toretto. Their chemistry helped transform the film into a surprise success and launched one of cinema's biggest franchises. Paul returned in 2003 for Too Fast, Too Furious, stepped away from the third film and returned in 2009 for Fast and Furious. He remained central through Fast 5 and Fast and Furious 6. Cars were not simply part of Paul's acting career. He competed in the Red Line Time Attack racing series for the AE Performance team, driving a BMW E92 M3. He also owned the high-performance vehicle shop, Always Evolving, and built a private collection of more than 30 cars. The speed audiences saw on screen reflected a genuine part of his life. Paul also had a strong humanitarian side. In 2010, after a devastating earthquake struck Haiti, he founded Reach Out Worldwide. The organization was created to provide direct help after natural disasters, including earthquakes, hurricanes, and other emergencies. Paul wanted trained people on the ground, working directly with communities in need. His friendship with Vin Diesel grew during the same years. When the two first worked together in the early 2000s, the relationship began professionally, but it quickly became personal. They shared an interest in cars, adventure, and competition. During quiet periods, they even played World of Warcraft together without revealing their real identities to other players. Vin called Paul Pablo. He later said Paul helped him through difficult personal moments and sometimes offered guidance when family problems became complicated. Their relationship became a brotherhood based on trust. That is why Paul's death was not simply the loss of a co-star for Vin. It was the loss of someone he considered family. Vin's own journey had also been difficult. He was born Mark Sinclair on July 18, 1967 in Alameda County, California, and was raised in New York City with his fraternal twin brother, Paul. His first experience with acting came unexpectedly when he was 7. He and several friends entered a theater in Greenwich Village, intending to vandalize it. Instead of calling the police, theater director Crystal Field offered them a role in an upcoming production. As he grew older, Vin worked as a nightclub bouncer and adopted the name Vin Diesel. Hollywood did not immediately know how to cast him, so he created his own opportunity. In the middle of the 1990s, he wrote, directed, produced, and starred in the short film Multifacial. The story drew from his experience as a multiracial actor struggling in an industry obsessed with labels. Vin later appeared in Boiler Room and Pitch Black, where Riddick established him as a rising action star. In 2001, Dominic Toretto changed everything. Vin skipped Too Fast, Too Furious, but returned in 2009. Then helped lead the franchise through Fast 5, Furious 7, and Fast X. Away from the screen, Vin remained private. Since 2007, he has been in a relationship with model Paloma Jimenez, and they have 3 children. His youngest daughter was named Pauline in honor of Paul Walker. That choice showed how deeply Paul's memory remained connected to Vin's family. After Paul died, Vin kept that memory alive publicly and privately. At the 2015 MTV Movie Awards, he led an emotional tribute. He continued posting messages on Paul's birthday and on the anniversary of his death. On what would have been Paul's 50th birthday, Vin wrote that the tears never disappear, but they change, and that those who remain can only hope to make Paul proud. At the premiere of F9, Vin brought Meadow onto the stage and presented her presence as proof that family survives. By then, the relationship between Meadow and Vin was already clear. He was not claiming to be her father. He was honoring the trust of the man who had been his brother. Meadow also found her own way to honor Paul. On September 12, 2015, the day he would have turned 42, she launched the Paul Walker Foundation. She was only 16. The foundation reflected Paul's love of the ocean and conservation. It supports students and researchers in marine science, offers scholarships, and helps fund environmental projects. Meadow wanted the world to know that part of her father. Vin supported the foundation and amplified its mission. Jordana Brewster and Tyrese Gibson also showed support, showing that Paul's influence continued far beyond the films. Reach Out Worldwide also continued after Paul's death. When Nepal suffered a devastating earthquake in 2015, the organization was among those providing aid. Meadow remained involved with the mission, while Vin continued to draw attention to the causes Paul had cared about. Paul's legacy survived through action, not only through memory. The Fast and Furious franchise also refused to treat Brian O'Connor as forgotten. Furious 7 was close to completion when Paul died. Instead of removing Brian abruptly, the filmmakers created a farewell that became one of the most emotional moments in the series. In the final sequence, Brian drove away as See You Again by Wiz Khalifa and Charlie Puth played. The scene allowed the character to leave peacefully while honoring the actor behind him. Later films continued, using quiet references. This a feita si. So furious, Brian was mentioned as someone still living with his family. At the end of F9, a blue Nissan Skyline GTR, closely associated with Brian, arrived at the gathering. The message was simple. Brian remained part of their world, just as Paul remained part of the cast's real family. In May 23, that connection became even more personal when Fast X reached theaters. Meadow Walker appeared briefly as a flight attendant in a scene with John Cena's character, Jacob Toretto. The role was small, and Meadow wanted it that way. She did not want her appearance to interrupt the story or feel forced. She saw it as a quiet tribute to her father. For Meadow, entering the franchise was emotional because she had grown up around it. Vin said that seeing her on set did something to his soul. John Cena helped her feel comfortable during the scene, and the cast and crew treated her with warmth. When audiences recognized her, social media filled with messages saying Paul would have been proud. Producer Brandon Bertul and others close to Paul helped make the appearance possible. Not everyone reacted positively. Some critics claimed Meadow received the role only because of her family name. Others described the cameo as nepotism or an attempt to use emotion for publicity. Meadow's own explanation was different. She said the appearance was personal, small, and intended to honor her father. Other rumors went even further. Some online claims suggested Vin Diesel had legally adopted Meadow after Paul's death. The source story rejects that claim. Meadow remained connected to her biological family. Vin's role was emotional and protective, not legal. The most disturbing rumors tried to describe the relationship between Vin and Meadow as romantic. Nothing in their public actions supports that idea. Their bond developed from Paul's friendship with Vin's role as Meadow's godfather, the grief they shared, and the family connection that continued after Paul's death. Their silence about private details was not proof of a hidden relationship. It was a choice to protect something deeply personal. Meadow and Vin have rarely responded directly to every rumor. Instead, they have allowed their actions to define the truth. Vin has celebrated Meadow's milestones, protected Paul's memory, supported the foundation, and welcomed her into his family. Meadow has honored her father through charity conservation and her brief appearance in Fast X. Speculation continues about whether Meadow could return in a larger role. No confirmation in the source shows that she plans to build an acting career or join future Fast and Furious film. Her Fast X cameo may remain a single tribute. What is confirmed is the meaning behind it. She entered her father's cinematic world for a few moments, surrounded by people who had loved him. The real secret was never scandal. It was loyalty. Paul Walker trusted Vin Diesel with the most important person in his life. After Paul was gone, Vin did not forget that trust. He stood beside Meadow through grief, adulthood, marriage, and the preservation of her father's legacy. He did not become Paul Walker. He became the person who made sure Paul's daughter always knew that the family her father helped create was still there.